At this time, we would like to thank the Mercury News of the Bay Area News Group for sponsoring our upcoming panel about climate change and sustainability. It is also my honor to introduce our panel moderator, British Consul General Emily Cloak. She is the senior representative of the UK government in the Southwest United States, and her experience includes advising on the creation of the world's first green investment bank. Wow. She also advances for women and equality. Please welcome to our virtual stage, Miss Emily Cloak and the panelists for climate change and sustainability.
I'm just so delighted to be here to moderate the discussion today. And with that, my first question to the panelists. What does a truly sustainable world look like? Can we achieve it? Eliza, let's come to you on that first question.
Yes, thank you. So I think a truly sustainable world is one in which humans give to the environment as much as they take away. For instance, planting as many trees as chopping down. I also think a truly sustainable world is one that's run on clean energy, such as wind or solar power. Now, do I think I can get there and we can get there? I think we can, because I'm hopeful by the action that I've been seeing. I've seen youth who are advocating, who are marching, who are demanding action. And I've also seen some companies that are shifting to try to meet those demands. For instance, just about a week ago, I saw that General Motors is committing to be net zero carbon emission level by 2035. I know this seems far off, but if countries and companies start to try to meet these levels, then we can move forward to a more sustainable future.
Eliza, thank you so much for that. Sarah, let's go to you next on that question.
I think that, as Eliza said, a sustainable world is a huge undertaking. It'll be nothing short of totally remodeling everything on a social, political, technological, cultural, and infrastructural level. As pointed out earlier, these changes can't be made individually, so international cooperation is crucial for reconstruction of agriculture along sustainable lines, along with expansion of alternative energy harnessing techniques. These technologies are a social project involving everyone, and they need to occur globally. So that international conversation is super important, and I do think that if we come together as a society of human beings who live on a planet, it is possible.
Thank you so much. I love that. We all need to come together, and I think we've all got a part to play where we can. Danilo, let's go to you next on that question.
Great, thank you. Everyone has said essentially what I was going to say. Even though it is a very difficult question, it stumped me initially when I was thinking about it. And looking from the STEM, from a technological perspective, as we look at immediate dangers in terms of climate change and more long-term dangers, we really do see a massive need to combine science and policy much better than we have been doing so far. So again, I'm reiterating what others have said because this is a very salient point. We really, really do have to bridge this connection, both between countries, between groups within countries, and importantly, between science and policy.
Grace, let's go to you.
Hi, yes. So like Sarah said, we will have to essentially change our lifestyles and everything to reach a sustainable society.
So I'm really glad that there is now a question from Kanoa Igarashi.
Obviously, I see a lot of global climate change around me. My office is in the ocean. So for me, it's very difficult to see all this happening around us. Sea levels rising. I go to many places in the world. I come back to year after year, and you can see the beach is changing. It's very concerning, so I do my best to try and maintain and do my part. And I think 1% makes a big difference. So if we can all come together, we can make a big impact on our environment. How about you guys? Have you guys seen any kind of global impact on your day-to-day basis? well, obviously I had my story, but I would like to hear you guys as well. It's definitely a very concerning subject, and I'm sure we can all come together and talk about it.
So we've heard Kanoa's story there. Panel, have you personally witnessed any signs of the growing impact of climate change on our world? And what have you seen? Sarah, let's go to you first.
Well, living in Southern California, I'm very familiar with fire season. And year after year, we've seen fire season warnings going on for longer and longer and longer. And in the past year, 2020, the California fires were, the worst that I've seen them in my kind of conscious life. I remember checking the air quality on my phone just to make sure, is it going to be okay? Should I go outside today? And I remember seeing ash on my windshield one day. So definitely there is evidence that things are changing and not for the better. And that really does push me personally, and I think it does inspire a lot of others to take action.
Eliza, let's go to you next. Tell us what you've seen.
Yes, like everyone else, being from California, we see lots of wildfires. So that's just one example. Another example, I have been to Antarctica, and when I was there, I could see the glaciers melting at a very fast rate. It's called shelving when the ice falls off the main glacier, and this was occurring all around us. So both of these examples just show how we need to act immediately to combat climate change.
Thank you. Pearl, what have you seen?
Well, I can tell you that some of the hottest years on record, since record had been taken, have been in 2014 and 2015. And in California specifically, in August of 2020, there was a new record of 130 degrees in the Death Valley. I think that this speaks to the conditions that are growing, the climate heating. It's entirely unlivable. And I think that this is our call to action alone. And to speak to the fires, Los Angeles had the worst air quality in the world. It was worse than New Delhi for about a month. The sky was red. And we had to wear PPE just to breathe proper air, not even to protect us from COVID-19. So I think that the past decade alone has signaled that the earth is sick.
Pearl, thank you for sharing that with us. I'm going to pass over now to Mark Sanchez, who has a question for us.
How can young people make a difference to the companies that make the products young people buy?
So that's such an important question, everyone. How can young people make a difference to the companies that make the products young people buy? So, Pearl, let's go to you first on that question.
When it comes to consumerism, at the end of the day, we have the power. You have power over where your money is spent. And I think that that's very important to remember. And by having this power, you empower conglomerates, corporations. And I think it's so easy to not even think about this. But I think that as consumers, we have to be wise. We have to ask ourselves, is this company, is it supporting people? Is it supporting the planet? Or is it only looking out for profit margins? And I think that we have a responsibility to ask ourselves, what goes into this product? Is this a quality product? Was it made ethically? Is it helping the planet? And I think that if you don't like how something is made, if there's too much packaging, I say write a letter to corporate. If they ignored you at corporate, I say start a petition. And it goes and it goes. You can talk about products that you like and products that you don't like on social media, and you can start a discussion around it. But I think that there is a responsibility on consumers, and we need to hold these companies responsible for the upstream and downstream waste and the amount of fossil fuels that it goes into making a product or transporting it. And we should really consider these things when we are purchasing a product.
Pearl, thank you so much. Eliza, what do you think on that question?
I definitely agree with Pearl, and I think that we have to make a shift to support sustainable companies. Because if we support sustainable companies and then educate others so that they understand which companies are big offenders and have a big carbon footprint and which ones are better, then consumers can shift as a whole. And once consumers support sustainable companies, then the big offenders with big carbon footprints will have to make that shift as well to meet the demands of their consumers.
Thank you so much. I think both those answers have just shown the influence that young people and also consumers can have in terms of that shift to sustainability. I'm going to ask another question now. So, panel, where does responsibility for climate change lie? Sarah, what do you think on that?
So the responsibility question is a loaded one because as citizens in an increasingly globalized world, we all are contributing to the problems that are happening with our environment. However, what's really difficult, and I think what's really important to understand, is if you have someone who doesn't have the money to access a steady, clean energy supply and instead have to use, for example, a high emission diesel generator, you can allocate emissions to these people, but it's hard to say that the blame is on them. Instead, I think a lot of the blame rests with the institutions and the systems that enable such emissions and such situations to develop. So while we do all have individual responsibilities, I think it's important to acknowledge that a lot of the problems lie within our system, and that's why it's really important to work to change things from the ground up and working to kind of readjust our entire infrastructure to really support a sustainable future.
Thank you, Sarah. Grace, what do you think?
So like Sarah said, I also believe that everyone is a part of this issue. And a way to visualize this is like a pie chart. Big political leaders and policymakers and big companies, they take up a majority of the pie chart, and consumers and everyone else can be small fragments of the pie chart. So we all have to put in our part and help turn this around, spread awareness on social media, sign petitions, try and elect leaders who will fight against climate change.
Thank you, Grace. And I think that reference to a pie chart is a really good visual one. So panel, on a personal and also a local level, what can ordinary citizens do to tackle and combat climate change?
I think that some easy things, or not easy because it depends on the person, but I think that reducing your red meat intake is a place to start. Reducing your dairy if you can. There are tons of alternatives that are out there. And of course, traveling. If you can reduce the amount of plane trips or the amount of car trips you have, if you can perhaps maybe ask where your energy is coming from when you purchase energy credits. Is it solar? Is it wind? Is it coming from coal? These are questions that you can be asking yourself. And while there are tons of things that we can do as individuals to reduce our footprint, we should be sharing these things with our community. So I think as individuals, we need to find community where we can get more information, where we can find the ways that we can start to approach this. What can I be doing? What can my community be doing? And I think that once we find community, it will all fall into place. And it will be so much easier to find the types of things that we can change in our day-to-day lifestyle. But me personally, if maybe you are not as informed or don't know as much about sustainability, I say check out the footprintcalculator.org. I think that just having a general education on what causes carbon emissions is a great place to start. So informing yourself and then evaluating and seeing where you might be having some carbon emissions. Me personally, I try to walk as much as possible, take a bicycle, or use public transportation. And I know that public transportation and carpooling isn't an option at the moment, but we do need to think when coronavirus and COVID-19 has come to an end and when we can start living our normal lives again, what are we going to be doing as individuals to really collectively combat climate change?
Thank you so much, Pearl. That's really important, the need to find community and the importance of education that you outlined. Eliza, what do you think on that question?
Yes, I definitely agree that bringing awareness to yourself and others is very important. If you know the statistics and facts, then you'll be able to educate yourself and others and make good decisions about what you buy and how you move around the city. I also think that advocating is very important. Once you know the information, you have to take it and act. This can include writing to legislators, voting. Voting is very important. You have to vote for people who will pass climate change legislation. And also a third thing is march. Make yourself heard. Of course, now we can't do that with COVID, but those are just some ideas of how you can advocate for global legislation to help climate change.
Thank you so much. So panelists, thank you so much for how you've answered these questions and just contributing to such an important topic. I felt personally inspired by what you've shared with us today. So thank you so much. And thank you to everyone that is listening today. Goodbye.